Good evening, I'm Jack Maloney, and here are tonight's top stories. Fidel Castro is dead. Ohio State has beaten the team up north, and NASA has a plan to protect us from aliens. But our main story tonight is about nuclear energy. Our very own Tony LaBarge had the chance to sit down with nuclear expert Cam DeBracca. Here's what they had to say.
Why do countries use nuclear energy?
Nuclear energy is another option to natural gas and coal and other options like that. Those two options in particular, they produce a lot of CO2 emissions. Those CO2 emissions go out into the atmosphere and contribute to the greenhouse effect, which is the heating of the earth, and a lot of the issues around the world, especially in developing countries that they have with water shortages and crop failure, are due to these greenhouse gases and the greenhouse effect of the warming of the earth.
So, what are the major problems countries are seeing with nuclear energy?
A lot of the problems that they're seeing have to do with the waste. So radioactive waste is what's produced from nuclear energy production. So this waste can be around and still be radioactive for hundreds, if not thousands of years. In some cases, it may be even millions of years. If this waste is not contained properly and disposed of properly, these radioactive isotopes will be able to leak out, and in most cases will get into the water supply or even just get out into the environment and cause a lot of harmful mutations to humans and, in other cases, plants and animals, most of which will affect us greatly and also these other organisms.
So, it's the waste. What do countries do with it as of right now?
A lot of the countries right now are storing a lot of this waste on site. So when you have a nuclear reactor producing this energy, a lot of this waste is staying right in the facility. They have water baths where they put the waste in canisters and put it in the water. That will keep the waste for 100 years maybe, but there needs to be something else done. There's a few other countries that have been looking into geological storage. That's about it right now.
So, wait, where did nuclear anything start? Where did it stem from?
Nuclear energy and the thought of using nuclear fission and fusion started back in around 1944, 1945. This started with the Manhattan Project, which was originally a weapons project for the U.S. I'm pretty sure most people have heard of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. It's when we dropped 2 nuclear warheads on both of these towns. This is where nuclear energy, the process was thought of. Soon after the war, people saw the power and the energy that could be produced with a nuclear explosion, so they thought maybe we could harness this. In about 1950 to 1955, the first chain reaction of fission was producing a small amount of energy because they didn't know exactly how much material they would need. This is really where the first instance of nuclear energy generation started.
So, talk to me about geological storage. What are the plans of action? Like, what are we doing? What's going on? And what about the world? Are they doing anything?
Geological storage is basically a bunker that's hundreds of feet under the earth. So there'll be one shaft down to enter the facility, and then there'll also be a ventilation shaft. When the waste goes into the bunker, it'll be in large canisters that have a hard time rusting or corroding in any way like that. So there's no seepage of the material out. With that, this bunker also has 2 catch safes that have almost like a stream under them. So if anything were to leak out, it would go into these two streams, which would then be collected back up to the top and be repurposed or whatever they do with that. It's more so, it is very safe. The only thing is that people can still get inside. In terms of what countries are using it, the U.S. has a proposed site, Yucca Mountain, out in Nevada. Canada is in the process of research and development along with Switzerland. France is still in the process of researching, but they're actually starting to construct a site. They hope that will be done in 2020. And Sweden and Finland are both in the process of building direct geological storage sites.
Well, are there problems with this storage?
Like I previously said, one of the bigger issues is leakage. A lot of people still believe that even though these canisters have been approved by the EPA and other organizations that have done independent studies, many people around the area think that these canisters will still leak. In aspect to the Yucca Mountain site, many of the people that live around there don't believe that the site is far enough away from a large population. Within 80 miles, there's a large city. Also in that area, there's a lot of seismic activity. It's very close to California. We all know about all the earthquakes that hit California. In other aspects, in more relation to other countries, there have been other papers published that I do agree with, that people need to be concerned about terrorism. It's a growing concern around the world. We've seen all the recent incidents that have occurred, and especially something like nuclear waste. You can still use that in a dirty bomb. A dirty bomb is very easy to make if you have the right tools and personnel. Many of these groups do have the resources and the personnel to make a dirty bomb. Many of the countries in the Middle East where these groups are stemming from have the capabilities to produce a nuclear warhead of some sort, no matter what it can be. If they get this in a large population, the damage could be catastrophic. It is very easy for these individuals to go into one of these areas and take some material out. There's only, like I said, there's only one way in and one way out. If it's not very heavily guarded, they could easily get in there, and who knows what they would do with that.
So what material is used mostly by these energy companies?
The material that's used the most is there's a few isotopes of uranium that are used. When this reaction occurs, most of the waste that is produced is plutonium.
So is plutonium, does it hang around? Is there a life expectancy to it?
Yeah, it's something called a half-life. So the half-life is how long it takes for these isotopes or elements to decay. For most plutonium isotopes, it's roughly a few thousand years, and maybe a little more. Most of the time, these elements degrade into other isotopes of uranium. Some degrade into other isotopes. Most of these uranium isotopes have half-lives of millions and millions of years. A majority of the waste of the uranium that is produced can be used again in other energy-producing reactions, but the other uranium cannot be used anymore.
So you said that you can reuse parts of it. What kind of ways are there to reuse or recycle this material that is being produced?
So in a nuclear fission reactor, most of the waste that is produced from the reaction is still the same isotope of uranium that went in. The waste that is more going towards the storage side is the plutonium waste that has had alpha decay and stuff like that. Most of the waste, though, can be reused. Reprocessing of this waste is more of an upcoming science. It has been proven that it does work, but basically the uranium that is put into the reactor comes out at the end the same way as it went in, and it can be reused. 95% of what comes out of the reactor can be reused, making it more of an energy efficient process and very cost effective as well.
So you want to talk about cost effective. Why? Fundamentally, we could shoot all this into space. People, it's a very easy, small, elementary idea. Why don't we do that? Just to get rid of it altogether.
So, looking at space, yes, it is a great idea. I mean, you would never, as humans, we would never be able to get this waste again. I mean, you can look at past examples, not relating to nuclear waste, but looking at the pyramids in Egypt. They put their kings and queens in large temples, the pyramids. They're there to protect the wealth that these kings and queens had. Thousands of years later, we still go in and can find all these things. That's what the shooting of the materials into space was meant to prevent. If you try to shoot radioactive materials into space, there's a lot of unknowns that come with that. You don't know how the elements will react being shot into space, for one. But also you have to account for the cost effectiveness of that, which is the cost of shooting anything into space is astronomically high, along with the fact that these shuttles have had very, very good track records, but in 2 instances, they haven't worked out too well. In the instance of Challenger, it exploded on launch. If that were to happen over Cape Canaveral, you would have a large amount of nuclear waste exploding in midair. It would be like a nuclear bomb. So we would have, if we tried to do that, we'd have to regulate the amount of waste that could go into the air so much that it would not make sense in terms of cost of effectiveness. And also the risks are astronomically high as well.
So I read your paper, and I noticed a word in there. It's transmutation. What is that? What? How do we use it? Is it implemented? What happens?
Transmutation is still in the process of being researched. It has been proven with many other elements, smaller elements, carbon and things like that. And it's still being researched for use of radioactive materials. Basically, transmutation is taking one element. So say we have a carbon, some elemental carbon. You take that and you have a source of neutrons, an excess source of neutrons. You shoot those neutrons at a very high energy at this carbon. And in turn, it shoots off a neutron of its own and becomes a new element. So we would take, in theory, we would take this radioactive material and we could take this high energy source of neutrons and shoot it at the radioactive material, which would then turn it into other elements. Most of these elements would be stable isotopes or elements that have a very, very short half-life of 2 years, and then that would then decay into other stable elements.
So we've talked a lot about like isotopes and stuff. Like just quick definition. What would be an isotope?
Isotope is basically different forms of one element. So if you have uranium, there's uranium-239, 236, 238. There's different types of uranium because of the different composition of the nucleus. You have neutrons and protons within the nucleus, and the neutrons are what makes up, it's what defines what an isotope is.
So what do you think? Are we doomed as a planet, or what's your opinion?
No, I think we have all the technology that we need. We have ways to reprocess the fuel. We have ways to turn one element into another. My take on all this is that we need to, one, reprocess as much as we can. We need to have more research into reprocessing. 95% of the fuel can be reused. We should reuse as much of that as we can. From there, what can't be reused, we should transmutate. The products of the transmutation, whatever it may be, so if we have unstable isotopes that are still radioactive, we should take care of those by deep earth mutation, which basically you shoot the elements down into the ground in their own canister that pretty much melts the rock around it and makes a secure system within the earth that makes sure that none of the leakage that we talked about with geological storage can happen. That is what I feel is the best option for the U.S. and other countries around the world that are using nuclear energy prominently. I mean, you look at Japan; they're a landlocked country. They're on an island. They need as much space as they can. We could take up a 100-acre field, and for the fact of deep rock mutation, we could use that 100 acres within over hundreds of years and still not fill it because of the size that we're talking about. That's what I feel like is the best option for us and other countries.
So if money wasn't an option and you had any choice you want, what's the one solution you'd go after or make the advice to go start right now?
Money aside, I feel like the best option overall would be shooting it in outer space because it is irreversible. We would never be able to get those radioactive elements back. I mean, there's everybody saying, "Oh, if you shoot it at the sun, what would happen? The sun's not going to explode." I mean, that's where those isotopes come from. If we shoot it out into outer space, the likelihood of it hitting Pluto and exploding is minimal because it's not going to explode. Money aside, that would be the best option. But with the technology we have and the resources we have, I feel like reprocessing as much fuel as we can, then taking the excess waste that we have from reprocessing and transmutating it, then taking the elements that are not fully stable, that are still radioactive, and using deep rock mutation, I feel like that is the best and safest option for us going forward. It prevents the chance of radioactive elements being out in the open and leaking into water supplies, which is the biggest concern that people are having right now.
Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Cam's white paper will be available Tuesday, December 6th. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Tony. I hope you enjoyed our special on nuclear waste tonight. Hope you have a good night, Springfield.